Hi, everyone. I want to talk a little bit about growing up as a Jehovah's Witness and a girl. While I know I'm not alone, I don't speak for everybody, so this is just my story and the things that I learned as growing up a Jehovah's Witness female. One of the first things that you learn, but like so many of us do, Jehovah's Witness or not, is that boys and girls are different. What I learned as a Jehovah's Witness girl was that boys were better. Boys could do things that girls couldn't do. And women had to do certain things if they were around men, like cover their head to pray and do other things like that. So boys were better. There was something wrong with women kind of thing, and boys were better. And you'd also hear talks and stuff about certain kinds of sex were wrong. This was wrong, that was wrong, this was wrong. But you have to do your dues. So I'm learning about, okay, sex is something that you have to do. As married couples, you have to do it. And apparently it's a wifely do. I'd hear more about the wifely do than I would about anything else. The wifely do, wifely do. Okay, so it's something women do. Okay, got it. Sex, women do it. All right, got it. And then there would be, you'd hear about if a man strayed away, it was because the woman his wife wasn't giving him enough sex, so it was her fault if he strayed. If a man fell guilty of fornication, it was because the woman was enticing him, so it's all about her and sex. And so I started getting this kind of warped idea that that was the woman's job, was sex. Then you've got the tie-in of obey, putting on the new personality. As a child, you're taught to basically do whatever the adults tell you to do. Jehovah's Witness, they're the adults and you do what they tell you. So there's a lot of obeying going on, kind of thing. And putting on the new personality. As a Jehovah's Witness, you are judged so much by external appearances. Your spirituality is judged by how much you do, or how you look, or how many meetings you make, how much you go in service, how much you comment at the meetings, how well your literature is underlined, how you dress, how you this, how you that. Is your hair cut short enough? Is there too much makeup? It's so judgmental. And it's all about what other people are going to think of you. So I developed that in the extreme. I was constantly worried about what other people were thinking about me. And that carried a long time into my adulthood. But I was always so worried about what other people thought about me. I knew what I thought about myself. I wasn't good enough. That was the constant running theme of my life for a long time was, I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. I keep trying, but I'm just not good enough. And then I would judge everybody else. I would put myself in their shoes to judge me, kind of thing. So I was always worried about what other people were thinking about me. So it was a very low self-image. Let's just put it that way. So I learned that women's job was sex, that it was a wifely's due, and anything that involved sex was the woman's fault or it was her responsibility. So it was just women and sex. And that, women were designed for men. That was our job, was to take care of the man. So that's sex. But that's really how it worked to me, was that women were one thing and men were another thing. That were two separate things, and the one's job is sex, basically. So when I got married, the self-image of not being good enough really was a factor in my getting married. I didn't deserve better. I took basically the first guy that came along. It was better to be married. I didn't deserve better. I didn't, like myself. So I had that, if they get to know me too long, they won't want to marry me. There was a lot of these things going on. So, like many of us do, I rushed into marriage and I picked the wrong guy. Yeah. And then, of course, we divorced. I've talked about that many times. We divorced. And due to that divorce, I was thrown out into the world, kind of thing. And, it took a while before I got back into the dating pool. But once I started dating, all of that baggage carried over with me. I had my job is for sex. I also had learned that disagreements meant that your love and affection could be taken away because I was now being ostracized. And I also had this weird thing that because men and women were different, that men did not feel emotion the same way women did. So I had just this weird stuff going on. And then I also had on top of it the worrying about what other people think. So when I started entering the dating pool, it was a case of, if I'm alone, people are going to know, they're going to think something's wrong with me. So I should be dating somebody because I don't want people thinking that there's something wrong with me. My job is sex. Now, even though I grew up with the Jehovah's Witness fornication is wrong, that my job is sex was stronger, and that's my job. So dating equals sex kind of thing. And it was better to be dating than alone because that way nobody would think there was something wrong with me. And then there was the confrontational thing. It's like having a difference of opinion, arguing. You couldn't have a difference of an opinion because you could be shunned. And so when I was dating somebody, as soon as we got into an argument or a disagreement, I would just bail, And it was funny because it was years later that I was talking to somebody about my views of relationships, and he was horrified, absolutely horrified that, men have feelings too. And it was this huge education of men have feelings? What? What are you talking about? It just blew me out of the water because I thought I was doing these guys a favor. I thought I'm dating them, I'm giving them sex, and I'm even sacrificing myself that when we have an argument, I'll leave so they don't have to deal with that. And I did not realize the path of destruction that I was leaving because of this warped point of view. But during the learning, men had feelings, and talking to other people, it turned out I did not know anything about dating. After all, dating did not equal sex. What do you know about that? And one of my friends, I was talking to her about it, and she ended up giving me an exercise to do. And she told me that I needed, a good dose of, self-respect and, to look at myself differently. So she had me write down a list of 25 things that I like about myself. And I was like, I can't list 25 things. And she was like, if you can't list 25 things, you don't have anything to offer anybody. And I didn't have one thing. The opinion that I had of myself back then, that was a hard assignment. It's just hard to look back and see what an empty shell of a person I was back then. But I started that assignment, and it took months. And for a long time, I liked the fact that I brushed my teeth every morning. that was the best I could do for a long time. You know, then I added I liked my handwriting. It took a long time. It was very, very hard. But it was one of those exercises that it probably had the biggest transformation on me in so many ways because it changed the way I looked at myself. It got me looking at myself, and it changed the way I looked at myself. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's what it did. Instead of focusing on the negative of the I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough, or my focus changed to actively looking for things that I liked about myself. And it changed my whole perspective of myself. I learned that I was a pretty okay person, and that I had a lot of good things about me. And I wasn't just a complete waste of space. But yeah, I was a mess. But growing up as a Jehovah's Witness girl, that's what I learned. I learned that I was less than, that I was good for one thing. It was tough. And what's interesting is I peek into, there's quite a few Jehovah's Witness singles groups around. And every once in a while I'll peek in, and it is amazing to see how they treat it like a shopping mall. It's like, I'm in the singles group. I think I like you. Done. It's not quite that black and white, but it is pretty quick how they want to latch on to somebody because somebody has said a few good things. You know, and to me it's just jarring to see that, even though back then that's how I was. And it was better to be with somebody. It didn't matter as long as they were spiritual, meaning putting enough time in service. They were good enough, and I'll grab one. And it's just mind-blowing to me. But that is what we learn as Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, it's better to be married than to possibly have sex or masturbate outside of marriage. And of course, if men masturbate, it's women's fault. All right, so I ended up going into a weird ramble, and I cut that out. And but that's really all I have to say, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.